And thanks for inviting us. I'm going to pass it around. These are the program sheets that we were working on in committee.
Okay. These lay out the square footage of various parts of the building, is that correct?
Correct. This goes through sort of a systematic way of outlining exactly what the spaces will be and how big those spaces are
Okay.
at the current moment as proposed. So once you have that, I would like to jump into the progress that we've made, and then we'll get back to the program. So one of the things that we took a look at, and you can see here on the screen, is where the existing middle school sits, and that is dashed in the red line that runs around here.
Oh, yeah.
Because one of the things that we need to consider, and one of the things that's driving the site design, is the fact that we need to keep the middle school up and operational while the construction is taking place. And so it's very important as we move forward in the design, we're also thinking about logistically, where do the buses drop off, where do the parents drop off, how does all that continue to work the way it works today while the construction is going on. In addition to that, and so what you see here laid over an initial site concept is that red outline of the existing building. In addition to that, we are talking about expanding the parking significantly, and we're also talking about separating the bus drop-off to put that in a safe area so that the kids are not in the middle of the bus drop-off like they are today, and also getting the parents off the street so we don't have the continued traffic issues that take place on Denison and Garrison. So one of the ideas is to take your existing parking lot, which is here on the corner, and just expand that into the former building footprint. So that would give us some parking up front. We would talk to the town about Garrison and Denison. What does it mean to continue the one-way, but also what does it mean to make it a two-way road? So that we can really study the benefits of having parents arrive either way, up and down Denison. Because one of the things that we're thinking about is having an entrance here onto the site. And so this would pull all of the parents.
Where's the here? We can't see.
We're not seeing your, it's not showing up on there when you're
Really?
pointing or, yeah.
Okay. You have a microphone? I'll go up
cursor.
there and,
Point it. Right there, Ron.
okay.
Oh, no, not, oh.
No, I'm sorry. No, it's, we can't, when you.
Yeah, he's going to go over there and place.
Oh, okay, I got it, okay.
Is that microphone on, Ron?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound good.
All right. So this is the red that I'm talking about in terms of the middle school. This is the existing parking here that we will expand to get more parking. This is Denison and Garrison here.
Yep.
The idea is to create a new site entrance that essentially has a parent drop-off
Oh, yeah.
as well as a visitor and parent parking area, also for visitors. So what you end up with is a parking area here and a parking area here with a full-size soccer field in the middle. What that does is also creates sort of a front yard to the new school once the old building is gone. You'll see more parking spaces back here. We can use that exact same loop to bring faculty or staff into a parking area. We're also thinking that during construction, that could be a good place to put the geothermal wells, is underneath that parking lot. And then that would come right into the building. You'd be able to service the building from here in terms of kitchen drop-off and such. And the buses would come up Code Drive from the high school like they do today. They would pull off in this area, so you can see a sidewalk here and a pull-off area, and then more drop-off area for the buses, and that would allow them to turn around and go right back to the high school the way they do today. So there's a lot of things driving the site, because we all knew it was a tight site, but what we were thinking of is make this more beneficial for the buses, separate the parking, so that you have parents over here and buses over here to make it more safe. And then there's nothing in between. So as the students either get dropped off by bus or by parents, they're in a safe area in front of the school, and they can come in the school. The other question is, we have a pinch point here and here with the topography. So as we start designing the building, we want to be very careful in terms of how do we approach that. We need to meet with the local jurisdictions, like such as the fire department and the building department, to say what do we need for access around the entire building. So we want to also do that. And then there's even been some discussion about using these parking spaces overnight for the buses, and possibly even having some kind of carport over that to keep the snow off, because we understand a lot of resources and time go into shoveling out the buses every time there's a snowstorm. So with that, you can see that what we've done, just as a starting point, is to put together a footprint, if you will. So that's where the new building would sit. And what we have here tonight, obviously, is a model sitting on a table next to you. And I think we can start playing with this, because when you look at this area here, we obviously have to go vertical. So we've been talking about a 4-story building, and we can talk about that a little bit more right now.
Ron, before you go to the next slide.
Yep.
Does any board member have any questions about the conceptual layout at this, on this slide?
What's the total number of parking spaces?
205, it says. Either 203 or 205.
What do we have currently, actually?
So like 120, I think?
Jay, what's the approximate number of parking spaces at the school?
Limited.
A lot less than 200.
A lot less than 200. Many staff park on Denison, and again, the town of Durham owns that. So it's, my guess is probably about 120 spots, which Durham residents use as well. So.
Thank you.
The intent would obviously be to make as safe of a area as we can and get as many parking spaces as we can.
Well, I mean, I think one of the current problems, too, is where all that parking is right now. It's kind of a narrow thing because the parking's on both sides, and you have the traffic going in, and that design is like so much better because it separates the parking spaces from the actual drop-off loop.
Yep.
The other thing I would point out is if Denison and Garrison, if the town allowed them to be two-way, if you were a parent dropping off your youngster and you came in on Garrison and then took a left on Denison, you have a huge lineup of space which would not interfere with the Baghdad neighborhood or the Madbury Road. So it could be a major way of eliminating congestion.
Yeah, I mean, what it does is, like, right now, that queue that lines up on Baghdad that goes out to Madbury, you pull it off of Madbury now and don't have that choke point anymore, so it's much, much better.
Another thought, too, that's part of the process, is take Denison and reverse it one way, go the other way. So now they're all coming in, and they're going back, coming in the loop, going back out, and there's no cross-traffic. Come right out, you take all the traffic now off of Baghdad and Madbury, and you bring it in here, but Garrison would be two-way. And you'd also still keep those parking spots on either side of Denison, which we can use not just for faculty, but if you have an event there, or you need parking.
But you can see the importance of us being able to meet with Todd Selig and his leadership team related to the traffic pattern, because the police and the fire obviously will want to contribute to this pattern, this design. The idea that do we have to put something behind the building? So one of the issues that the initial design for this had, not Ron's design, but the traffic engineers, is they had another exit onto Co Drive at the very end corner of the building. The problem with that is that's like a very, very steep rake, and so it doesn't make sense to do that because nobody would be able to get up it anyway in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess my only other concern as far as parking goes, if we are in fact building a much larger auditorium, and we did have a big event that could accommodate, because now we have a space, we would have to figure out, I mean, there's obviously additional parking down at the high school, but, how would we get folks, are they going to walk off from the high school in the wintertime, that kind of thing, I guess.
You can park
would be a
along
concern.
Co, and you can also use the bus turnout, because we don't need the bus turnout at night.
Yeah, so we could do something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like it looks like a lot of concrete or a lot of asphalt.
Yeah, one of the things that we were trying to do from a civil engineering perspective is actually also break this so that it is a lot of asphalt, but in different areas.
It's not a sea of asphalt.
So it's not a sea of asphalt, exactly, yeah. And that also helps with the drainage, because we have to treat all of the stormwater off of the asphalt. So if we're sort of mixing in pervious areas, so it's not just one big sea of asphalt, it works a little bit better. And that's our civil engineers chiming in about all of that.
And that's why we were looking at moving that field up, because originally we could have put it towards the edge, but we put parking there so you can come straight off of Garrison. But also, by pushing it closer to the building, you don't have to build a big retaining wall on
Yeah.
the side, because there's such a big drop off there, and that's a more cost-effective move.
Yeah, and I'm sorry you can't see my pointer, but also right along Garrison is some existing parking. So pulling that field, as you just mentioned, towards the building allows you to keep that parking there.
Right.
Which is even more parking. So we've accounted for like 60-plus spaces on Dennison within that 203.
Right.
And you could also, instead of using a retaining wall, use a berm. And a berm is great if you want to sit and watch a soccer game,
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
you know?
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Ron.
Gonna fix this for me.
He is, he's a genius.
I'm watching I'm learning something here.
Alex,
Now can you see this?
That's so much
gone.
better.
Just imagine.
All right. Microsoft. So as we're going through this and we're trying to figure out exactly the best way to design the site, and we're not there yet, this is an initial concept, we have to continue working in committee, is we took a look at the educational space, you know, how big is this building? So we had met with all of the faculty and the staff, and we've met with the committee a couple times, and what we were putting together is the difference between educational space, administrative space, athletics, music, recital hall, learning commons, which is the library and media. And as we've been working through this, and you have all of the breakdowns in the handout, we've essentially come up with 59,375 square feet of educational space. And then you'll see that that's multiplied by a 40% net to gross. So just so everyone knows, what the net to gross, that accommodates the thicknesses of the walls, restrooms, storage spaces, stairways, elevators, mechanical space, walkways around the building, all of that stuff. So what we're looking at in terms of net square footage is what you see in the first column. Then you have the 40% net to gross, and what you see in the far right column, that is the size of the building. So, and we have a comparison. This is the proposed building. The next slide will be the existing, and you can see the real difference. So what we've come up with in working with everyone is a net usable building of 102,725 square feet. And then if you multiply that times 40%, you come up with 41,000 square feet of stairways, elevators, storage, all those things we just mentioned, restrooms, mechanical space. That gets us to a total square footage, gross square footage, of 143,815 square feet. So how that breaks down is we've got 83,000 square feet of educational space, 6,300 for administration and support, 13,090 for the gym, fitness room, locker rooms, restrooms. Recital hall is 23,240. The dining and kitchen area has been sized for 2 lunches, which really makes a difference in the educational delivery, and that's sized at 11,900. That includes the kitchen, the dining area where the students will eat, also the servery where they pick up the food, food storage, And then the Learning Commons, which is essentially your library and media and IT support at 6,090 square feet. So I think the thing to focus on here is that net to gross is 41,000 square feet over a building that has net usable space of 102,000 square feet. When we look at your existing, which is here on the next slide, we know that your existing building is 106,999 gross square feet. So if we measure, looking at the plans, the existing plans, all of your net usable square footage, you end up with 65,935 square feet. That's what people mean when they say the rooms are too small, the classrooms are too small, they don't have the breakout space that they need. But you'll also notice, and this isn't, this just is the math, it just so happens that you have 41,000 square feet of hallways and stairways and wall thicknesses and things like that, ramps. And so you can see how we're getting almost twice the educational space for the same amount of support space, which is that net to gross. I know this is a lot to sort of take in, and I know I just handed everybody the spreadsheets, but is there any questions on that and how we arrived at some of these things?
It just shows how inefficient the current building is.
Lots of walking around, yeah.
So that 41,000 is those hallways that go on forever and, yeah, okay.
Yep.
And this is an argument for building up then, right? Isn't because you build up, you reduce the stairway?
Well, what this means is that if you take that 65,000, so when you design schools, sort of the industry standard is to assume 40% for the wall thicknesses and the mechanical rooms and storage and stairs and such. What that means is if you do the math on this one, your 65,935 is well above 40%. And that's why it says existing net to gross. I think when we did the math, we're over 50, or close to 60.
60, yeah.
Yeah. And so it really makes a difference. So you're basically getting a 20% more efficient building, but you're also getting all of the right sizes in the educational spaces, and you're also getting the educational spaces that when we talk to the team leaders and the faculty is what they need to deliver the educational program. Okay. So then we just wanted to, we're always taking a look at the project cost. And we're always benchmarking this. And so when we came in with our first numbers, we told you we thought it was a responsible and sort of conservative budget. So one of the things that we've done is we've actually wanted to present what we're seeing in the industry right now. And obviously, things are different in different states. So here in New Hampshire, Dover High School just opened. I happen to know that firm pretty well. So in talking with them, their building, which was bid in late 2015 and early 2016, was $241 a square foot, and that included everything from site to building to demo. That's the all-in construction price that they gave me. Midco School of Technology, which is one of our projects that was bid in August of 2017, and again, this is the all-in price, was $228.70 a square foot. That building has a geothermal system, but I did not include that because, as you'll see, I didn't include the numbers for Oyster River, and Dover High School does not have a geothermal, so I kind of broke that out separately. Morse High School, which is another one of our projects. It's in Bath, Maine, and that is bidding actually this month, February 28th. And we worked pretty closely with the state of Maine establishing these budgets, and they also do a very good job tracking what every school costs. And so, because with them, it's just, they very much focus on the cost. So right now, that building that's out to bid, and it's going to come in 2 weeks, is budgeted at $228.70 a square foot. And the state of Maine requires us to carry a bid contingency. So after all the estimating that the estimators do and all of the pricing, they add 5% to that. And they say, just in case it comes in over budget, we have some money. So they've budgeted 5% of the cost, which is $11.22. And that is the building only. And the reason why that's different, or we did it that way, is because that also has a geothermal system. And you'll see on the right-hand column, it says building only, because that site is currently under construction. We had an early site package, and that site is $16.9 million. I always round up to 17. And that 17 million includes a geothermal system, but it also includes a lot of other things. So Palmer High School is a project we're doing right now in Hudson, New Hampshire. And they have, it's a phased occupied renovation, and it's really broken into several different parts. And so the big part, which is the additions of career and technical education space, is budgeted right now at $213.12 a square foot. They have then like $102 for a gut renovation, but that's sort of repurposing some interior space. So we wanted to use the more real number. And then Sanford High School, which is another one of our projects that just opened this fall, was bid in early 2015, and that project was $215 a square foot. And so what I've done with Andre is we've escalated that by adding 20% to get to $258 a square foot. I do have a note here, though, because that building has a lot of systems that we won't have in this building. They have a lot of concrete masonry instead of drywall partitions. So with that, what we have right now at Oyster River is the CM, Andre, from Bowen Corporation, had assigned $250 a square foot just for the building. And so you can see how that compares to the numbers we just went through. The site costs at $2.8 million is another $20.50 a square foot. He then has $425,000 in addition to all of that for demolition, which is $3.11 per square foot. And then his CM fee on top of all of that, which is 2.5% of the construction cost, is $6.30, which essentially gets us to $279.91. So we've been calling it $277, just for rounding down. And then in addition to that money, we also have $900,000 for the geothermal system. So, you know, it's for that reason, and we're going to continue to do this throughout this entire project. You always want to continuously look at the price and make sure that what we're doing matches what we're carrying for budgets. Any questions or
on that slide?
comments? So I hope we have some fun now, because what we've been doing is we're going to talk about the drivers that are driving the building design. So as we started, we've got our program almost complete. We talked about the logistics of the site, and what you'll see here on the screen. Oh, sorry, I can't show you. All right, well, what you can see here on the screen behind the existing building, the colorful thing there, that would be the new school. And because we're building the school where we are and we're going vertically, that's some of the things that are driving the design. So the first thing that we talked about, one of the benefits of a vertical building. So one of the benefits of a vertical building is that you have an opportunity to limit all of the education space on the first floor. So when people talk about coming to the building and making it safe, if all the educational activities, except for just a handful, are going on the upper floors, then if anything does happen on the first floor, you're going to have a lot less students on the first floor. So you have a benefit of having the gym be on the first floor, the music spaces be on the first floor, and then I think the library on the first floor and the dining facility. But other than that, all your educational space would be on upper floors. The other reason to get them on upper floors is you're starting to harvest a lot more daylight without having to knock down trees as you go up vertically. So this is one option, and this option, which you can't see very well, but we've got the model here that we can play with, is that when the building goes away, you'd have that front yard, and you'd be able to walk right through the building. And we're taking advantage of the upper floors by getting both northern and southern daylighting, into the learning spaces by using this spine, if you will, that runs through the building, and the spine becomes that common shared area amongst all the teams, and is also the dining commons, which is, we talked about, the heart of the school. And that's attached to the learning commons. So when the dining commons is not being used for lunch, it becomes part of that library. So projects and things can take place in that dining area. The other option is what we talked about, sort of having one building over another, sort of a two-story building plus a two-story building. And what that option does is very similar to the first option, but it becomes more efficient. But at the same time, there are pros and cons to both. So when we meet in committee and we meet with the educators, we'll talk about some of that stuff. The other drivers of this is you want to keep the teams together. So 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and 5th grade. But at the same time, we've also talked about there being a connection between 5th grade and 6th grade, and then a connection between 7th grade and 8th grade. So by lifting all of those spaces to the 3rd and the 4th floor, you end up with a two-story team, pod, if you will. And what the educators were talking about is having that close connection, but also being a little bit separate, so that you can have 2 8th grade teams, 2 5th grade teams, 2 7th grade teams. So by stacking them, you have a connection because you're connected by a stair, but you're also separated enough so that the teams are a little bit distinct. If you start looping or other programs that you have in the building, you have that option to, again, sort of have the teachers really be collaborating within one another as they start moving with the students through the grades. So we have another picture here that explains that a little bit better, which I probably should have been using. And this, you can see everything on the first floor. And then we have things on the second floor. And then this and this are the differences between the 2, 3rd, and 4th floors. So one, you can see there's a little bit more separation between the teams. And one, all 4 teams are actually connected by STEM and art. And so they're off the team, but they're very close to the team. Then we were thinking on the second floor, you would have language arts and some of the other educational spaces. And then there's the thought of, in the front of the building, we could have administration, nurse, counseling, and SPED all on the first floor. Or what we've done successfully in some other areas when we do a project like this is to put the counselors and SPED on the second floor, or some combination of it. And then the same thing with nurse and administration, is we take all those offices and we do a 2-story design, and they have their own dedicated internal stair. So they are completely connected. Nobody uses that stair except for them. But what it does is it puts administrators on the second floor of the building with a view of the entire parking lot, all of the streets coming by. So now you don't only have eyes on the first floor, you have eyes on the second floor, and those eyes are all focusing in the same direction. It's just an option, you know, and as we start to develop these concepts, we would go back and talk to Jay and his staff and all the educational leaders to make sure what works for them and what they think will work into the future as well. So what we have here tonight, and I don't know if you want to come over and play with this, but is we brought the model because what you can start to see is as you start stacking these things, there's lots of opportunities to say not only how does it work on the site, but how does it work educationally.
So can you talk a little bit about the model, Ron?
Yep. So I guess if you take a look at the model that we have, what we're doing is we're taking these Lego pieces, if you will, and we've got them to scale because we really want to see how these things start to stack vertically, and we want to see how much space they take on the site. And so when you look at the model like this in 3 dimensions, you can really see that as you came in the front door here, you'll be able to see right through the building. You'll be coming into the dining commons and then through the learning commons and out to the back of the building. We've talked about outdoor educational space being just as important as the indoor. You can also take these pieces and turn them, like we had shown, the other concept. And now you have sort of a hub in the middle of the building where art and STEM can take place. So there are benefits to working in this way and working in this type of model when we meet in committee and when we meet with the educators, to really stop playing about, what goes where. What you also see in the model is the gymnasium. Oh, nice. So the gymnasium is here. And the reason for that is if we get service coming in from the parking areas like we talked about, you'd be able to serve the dining commons, but you're also coming into the side of the gym if you ever have to deliver equipment, so forth. And then the students would be able to come out of the gym and right to the field up front. The reason the recital hall is facing Co-Drive is because there's also a lot of parents come in to drop off and pick up instruments.
Yep.
And so there's the opportunity for them to come in right at the front door, and you have music right there on your right-hand side, so we could build this area of instrument storage, if you will, and mix that up with student display as you come in the front door of the building. But it would also allow the music room in the back of the building to have exit doors only to allow the faculty to go and share instruments with the high school. So they'd be able to come into the bus loop after school and park a vehicle there, and then bring the instruments right out to the vehicle and go right to the high school. So we were thinking that there wanted to be access for the kitchens, obviously with food deliveries, and where do you put the dumpster and things like that, but also for the gym and for the music program, so that that can continue to be shared with the high school. So, yep.
Just have a question about, in terms of all these, the different designs, in terms of, obviously building for who, who knows what'll happen, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, whatever, for expansion, and would these different, models or designs that you're talking about, would they be able to accommodate some sort of an expansion down the road if it was necessary?
Right, and that's something we need to take a look at and consider. So with the 4-story building, that's the, we're saving space. If it was a 3-story building, you'd have a bigger footprint. So what you have on the site that you've seen is the parking and then the field itself. And so as we continue down this road, we will talk about how does it expand as we pull the building forward, because you can still go down the hill. So it may very well be that we don't go down the hill on this project, but we think about it and we say, how do we do that in the future?
If we need to, okay.
If you need to. So you can, I think both of these designs lend themselves to a front door and a back door. So you can easily add towards the back or add towards the front.
Todd, you want the board to be able to...
Just one question before we go. It seems to me that use of the site demands that the entire older building be demolished. I mean,
Currently.
I don't see there's any way around, otherwise we don't have the space for the parking, the access, the field. So, I mean, I don't know that we need a vote, but I think we need a sense of him going forward with a design that presumes that that entire space will be used and the entire middle school will be demolished. So I just want to know how, if people want to push back on that, raise questions about that, because it seems to me that needs to be understood to go forward. So just the sense of the board on that. I can't see any way around.
Well, without that, we severely limit our options
Yeah.
without demolishing the entire building.
Well, I mean, I agree. I think, first of all, even looking at retaining what we have, it messes up your parking loop and parking area. It just is not it's not an effective use of space. I think I'm kind of, why would we keep an old section of the building is what I've come back to. It's like, the hope would be, and the idea was that, like, to be a community center, if we design the new school correctly, then the after-school activities that we'd use in a community center would happen in the middle school anyway. It would just happen in a more efficient setting. So I don't see why, even though the old gym was only 1996, in order to try to retrofit it and keep it would be extraordinarily expensive, and I don't know who would do that. I think it's a better use of resources to think of how we incorporate that in this design, which is a more efficient use of space.
And Andre, the figure we had was something like $850,000, $900,000 to retrofit the gym to make it. the current gym to make it usable, and whether the town of Durham, because that's,
No,
whether the town of Durham would,
only speak for myself, no,
yeah, speaking for the town, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
No, again, I think the idea really is, because while it was a great offer, it's like, how does that need fit within this structure, the new structure you're doing? Because I think it can. We currently do it at the high school. If we do it correctly, then the middle school will probably be just as busy as the high school. It gives you an alternative site, particularly like right now, if we have plays or musical things, we only have one location to do it. This gives us a lot more flexibility. So again, I just don't see, while it's a great offer, I don't see why we would retain what we had.
Dr. Morse, could you just remind us, the state recommendation for minimum lot size is what, and what do we have? Do you remember roughly? I know what we have is a smaller lot than the recommended
Yeah.
minimum.
I think-
I
but-
want to
my-
remember it's
16.
Is that right?
I mean, it's not a hard and fast rule, but the recommendation would be
I understand,
16.
yep.
And this is, I think, is a shade under 12.
Yeah.
So that
So
we're-
the point I'm trying to make is we are already dealing with a relatively small lot in the first place. And this design really utilizes that space a lot more efficiently than we have been using it. But we would sacrifice a great deal of that in keeping and retrofitting any existing structures.
And one thing that's been brought to our attention too is that we have a soccer field up front, but we haven't found a place for kids to have recess in some kind of play area. Not to just go run around on the soccer field, but to actually have some kind of managed play area out, in that area. So we still have some things to put on the site. So it's not all, it's not all there yet.
So is the sense of the board that to go forward with a plan that would not, demolish the middle school? That, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I appreciate being able to, maybe try and save some of this, it definitely, it's just not efficient, as Al has mentioned, and unfortunately, I think to be able to really make the best use of the space we have and not have those artificial limitations, I think it's just the way that it needs to go.
Others want to speak up?
I guess I agree with almost everything that was said, including with regards to the preservation of the existing building and the limitations that would put on us. But expanding on what you said about potentially using the space in the new building for additional activities, I think that's also input that we need to provide as early on in this process as possible, because that probably does mean at least a little bit, even if we're making efficient use of space, it does mean probably a little bit of incremental space to facilitate whatever programming that is.
I agree. I mean, that's a really great point, because again, that should be part of the planning process, because you're going to get the think like, okay, if whatever, we don't have a community space for Lee, Madbury, or Durham, what would that look like, or how would you effectively use it in this building? And I think that's a great point.
Right, and maybe that means a separate entrance so that that's easy to separate from school activities during school hours or
Yeah.
something like that, so. Do you want to vote to make that more definitive?
I think
or-
we were thinking we didn't need this.
Just guidance, Michael. It's, it seems like the board is pretty clear on its guidance and direction, so I think the committee now knows to be able to drive Ron in a certain direction, so I think that's fine.